Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, which is Kesubos Daf Mem Tes. We are holding right on top of the Amud, beginning with the word Ve'ema. Let's go back a bit to yesterday's sugya. We learned that a girl, a Nara, while still by her father, is considered in the rishus of her father. He assumes all rights, obligations, he has all the privileges which were discussed the last couple of days. As soon as she's in the husband's rishus, she was handed over to him for chuppah, for marriage. Now he takes over that status. What happens if it's somewhere in the middle? The husband sent somebody to pick her up. So she was handed to the shliach, the emissary of the Baal. We had a machlekes yesterday, whether that's considered an initiation of some sort, initiation of marriage, or not. However, the Gemara concluded, according to all shittos, there is some changeover in status. As soon as she enters the semi-rishus of the husband, as long as she was picked up by the shliach of her husband, she's already considered somewhat an eshes ish pertaining to the einish for znus. If znus occurs at that point, instead of treating her like a nara hamu'urasa, an engaged girl, in which case skila would apply, we treat her like a married woman, in which case death by choking chenek would apply at that point. Asks the Gemara, Ve'ema. What about the following question? Perhaps, sure, while she's in the company of the husband's shliach, we treat her this way. But let's say, Ve'ema, Hecha dehadrid lebein nosha. Suppose she has a change of heart and she turns around and goes back home. She was already on her way to her husband's home, being accompanied by the husband's shliach, and now she turns around, makes a U-turn, and goes back to her father. Hecha dehadrid lebein nosha, she goes back to her home. Hadra lemilsa kamaisa, perhaps her status should totally revert to the way it was beforehand. Is that so? So Rashi learns the Gemara is just presenting a question mark. Would indeed the halacha change if she would decide to go back home? Or do we say no? Once she's sort of in her husband's rishus, she left her father's rishus, it's too late. In which case, the einish for znus would remain as chenek. So basically it's a shaila on this specific halacha. Regarding znus at that point, once she's in the company of the Baal's shaliach, it's chenek. What happens if she turns around and goes back home? Amarava, it stays the way it is. Once she assumes this new status, we treat her as married pertaining to the halacha of znus. She maintains that status irrespective of whether she follows through with marriage or not. Amarava hu, that case, kvar paska tana dvere bishmal, was already determined and established by the Tana Dvere B'Shmuel, the Tana Dvere B'Shmuel. This is halacha regarding Hafaras Nadar. Typically, a father can interfere with his daughter's nether when she's still in his rishus, and likewise, once she's married, the husband can do the same. The pasuk says, "V'nei der almano grusha," a nether, a vow, expressed by a widow or an isha who is divorced. Kol asher asher al nafsho yakam Allah. Whatever she commits to stands. Nobody can get in the way of that. Well, of course, there's nobody in her life who would have the ability to interfere. She's already out of her father's rishus. She had already been married, so he's out of the picture. And likewise, there's no husband to speak of. She's divorced. She's an almana. So what's the point of this pasuk? What is the pasuk trying to tell us? What's the purpose of this pasuk? She's already out of her father's possession. And likewise, she's out of her husband's domain. What's the point of the pasuk teaching us that the nether in this state stands? It holds. Of course it does. Ella. Rather, it's for this case, the case that we're dealing with all along. She's sort of in the middle, in no man's land. Haresha Masara Av, L'shluchei Abal. Suppose father handed her over to the shliach of the husband to take her to his home for marriage. Oisha Masru Shluchei Av, L'shluchei Abal, or father had sent her with some shluchim, and they encountered the shluchim of the husband, and she was handed over to them. V'nis armala b'derech, oinis garsh, and something occurs. She became an almana suddenly, or a gerusha. How do we treat her now? Heich ani koiraba. How should I treat her? Which home does she relate to? With whom does she identify? Husband or father? Beis avia shalzu, she's connected to her father's home. Or beis bala shalzu, or her former husband's home, meaning who's going to have the ability to get involved with her neder? Can her father still have a say in this matter? Or the fact that she was already handed over to the shliach of the Baal, he relinquished all rights. She identified for that time being with her husband, and father can no longer interfere. Ela lo melacha. Rather, the pasuk is telling you like this. You're not sure how to deal with her? I'll tell you how to deal with her. Once she leaves her father's rishos, even for just a moment, by being sent along with the shliach of the Baal, he loses his rights. Shuv einoy yochai lahafer. So even though husband no longer has her, he passed away, he divorced, she does not return to her father's possession. So clearly, once she leaves, she doesn't come back. Likewise, in the case of the znus, once she identifies as a married woman pertaining to the chenek, which substitutes for skila, even if some change occurs as she goes back home, her status remains. Amra papa afanana mitanina. We actually have another Mishnah which supports that brisa, that once she is in the company of the shliach habal, her einish is chenek. Haba al nara hamurasa. A fellow gets involved with a nara who is engaged. Einei chayiv. The chayiv skila will only be if she conforms to the following. Achatei nara. She has to be during that that age period of nara. Bisula murasa, engaged. V'hi b'veisavia, and she still is part of her father's household. That's the Mishnah. Mishnah and Sanhedrin. Let's analyze the Mishnah. Bishloim min nara. I certainly understand that the term nara is trying to exclude a boigeres, v'loi boigeres. But if she's past nara, she's already a mature adult, not included. Besula, v'loi bula, we exclude the bula. Murasa, engaged, v'loi nesua, excluding married. Okay. But what about bebeis avia limutei mai? What's that coming to exclude? Lav limuti apparently is coming to exclude this case of ma sara'av. L'shluchei abal. Even if the father just handed her over to not to the husband himself, but to his shliach, she no longer identifies with beis avia, and therefore the halach of nara murasa would not apply. So it's a clear raya that she is treated as an eishes ish pertaining to chenek. Omar of Nachmar Yitzchak. Af anan namitanina. We have another Mishnah in Sanhedrin. Habal ishes ish. If a fellow gets involved with a married woman, and as soon as she enters the husband's jurisdiction for the sake of marriage, even though her new husband had not yet interacted with her as married, if one gets involved with the isha at this point, the einish is chenek. So the Mishnah clearly is telling us that nichnas halashus habal be'alma. As soon as she just gets into the rishus of Baal, even if she's in the company of his shliach, that's considered rishus habal, and her einish would change to chenek shma mino. That's a right in this halach. Continues the Mishnah. We're going to speak about whether or not a father is obligated, whether or not he has a mitzvah, to feed his children. The truth is that a father is not obligated. We do it, but he's not obligated to feed his daughter during his lifetime. And the Gemara will deal with this question, why the Mishnah specifies daughter over son. In any case, during his lifetime, he doesn't really have to support his children. Zeh midrash darash Rabbi Yehuda ben Azariah. So the following was a drasha presented by the new Nasi, Rabbi Yehuda ben Azariah, on the day that he was appointed Nasi, Lefnei Chachamim, in front of the Chachamim, B'Kar B'Yavna, in the vineyard in Yavna. So the Chachamim would sit in rows like a vineyard, and he got up and he told them as follows. There are two takonis in the Kesubos, one pertaining to sons and one pertaining to daughters. If an Isha brings a nedunya, which means the items which were recorded in the Kesubos, and she brings it into the marriage, and now she happens to have her set of children from a different marriage, and he has his set of children. She knows that if she passes away during her husband's lifetime, all the nedunya property will go to her husband, and then ultimately when he dies, it's going to be distributed evenly amongst all the children. She doesn't want that. She wants to avoid that type of situation. She doesn't want her properties to go over to her husband's set of kids, which aren't her kids. So she makes a deal, which is actually enacted in the Kesubos. It's a formal takanos chachamim. It's called Kesubos benin dichron. Benin dichron, the scharim children. They will get her Kesubos, meaning she can stipulate that I would like my own children, my own set of children, who aren't your children, to have the items of my Kesubos. I want it to stay in the family, as a family, estate, a family heirloom. I want it to stay in the family. So that's one takana, pertaining to boys. In addition, we have a takana pertaining to daughters. A person passes on, leaves behind an estate, his daughters will draw their support. They will be fed and clothed from this fellow's estate. So we have these two takanas in Kesubos. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Azariah made sort of a drasha, a connection, a correlation between the two. Both pertain to the same time zone. Habanim Yeshu, we have one takana, boys are yeresh to Kesubos of their mother. Second takana is v'habonis yizaynu, daughters get their mezainis from the departed father's estate. We connect the two things. Ma'habonim einon yoshin elal achar misas ha'av, just as these sons will only have access to that Kesubos after their father's passing. So it's an after-death type of arrangement. Afabonis ein nizaynos elal achar misas havi, and likewise the takana pertaining to daughters being supported from his property, that's only after his passing, but during his lifetime there is no chiyuv to support him. Says the Gemara, I have a diuk from the Mishnah. A father is not chayiv b'mezainis bitay. Why specify bitay? B'mezainis bitay yudeni chayiv. Only his daughters, he's not chayiv. Ha b'mezainis b'nei chayiv. Do you mean to say that he must support his sons? Number one. So it's not a question mark, it's just a statement. It's mashma in the Mishnah. But mezainis bitay, he's not chayiv. But his sons, he is chayiv. That's number one. Number two, we see from the Mishnah, bitay nami, chayiv u'deleka. There's no chayiv to feed a daughter. Ha mitzvah ikka, but there's a mitzvah to it. Which mitzvah? So the Rashbam and Baba Basra says, look, it's a very basic mitzvah of umibsarcha al tisalim. Don't ignore the plight of the closest ones to you, your own family. It's a mitzvah. So these 2 points appear out of the lashon of the Mishnah. Number one, he's chayev b'mezainis b'nai. Number two, daughter, although not a chayev, but it is a mitzvah. So daughter is a mitzvah, son is a chayev. Now we have a problem on our hands. Mani Masnisin, who's the author of our Mishnah? We have 3 shittas. It's none of them. Like Rabbi Meir, it doesn't fit with Rabbi Meir's approach to this whole sugya. Like Rabbi Yehuda, nor Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yochanan break the Sanya. Listen to this price. Mitzvah lozen as habonis. Although there's no chiyah, but there's a mitzvah to feed daughters Kal v'chomer lebanim de aski b'Torah, certainly sons because they're involved in learning. It's almost like it's part of your mitzvah to teach them, so you support them so that they learn. Who does this? Divid Rabbi Meir. The mitzvah to feed sons and certainly daughters and certainly sons. Rabbi Yehuda, he also agrees that there's a mitzvah to feed both, but he works the other way. Mitzvah laws in nesabonim. There is a mitzvah to feed sons, v'kal v'chomer lebanim, and certainly daughters mishum zelusa, to allow them to maintain their dignity. So a mitzvah to feed sons and certainly daughters. Rabbi Meir says daughters and certainly sons. Rabbi Yehuda Kessler, he disagrees. It's only after passing, after death. After father's passing, he's obligated to take care of his daughters by having them accommodated through his assets. But during father's lifetime, there is no chiv and there is no mitzvah. So back to the Mishnah. Mani masnisin, whose shita is our Mishnah following? It's inconsistent with all three shitas just mentioned. Rabbi Meir. According to Rabbi Meir, who said that there is a mitzvah for both sons and daughters. Ha'amar banim mitzvah. So Rabbi Meir tells us that there's a mitzvah for daughters and certainly sons because of their oisik and Torah. But it's just a mitzvah. In our Mishnah, it sounded like there was a chayva by sons, not just a mitzvah. So that doesn't work. Rabbi Yehuda, let's take a look at Rabbi Yehuda. Well, that doesn't either work. Ha'amar banim nami mitzvah. Because, according to Rabbi Yehuda as well, there's a mitzvah to feed sons. No chayva. Rabbi Yehuda, well, according to him, afilu mitzvah nami laka. There isn't even a mitzvah for both sons and daughters during his lifetime. So it's inconsistent with either shita. Ibo Yisema, one way to learn is like this. Rabbi Meir. Our Tana is Rabbi Meir. Ibo Yisema Rabbi Yehuda, it could be Rabbi Yehuda. Ibo Yisema Rabbi Yehuda Breika or Rabbi Yehuda Breika. The Gemara explains. Ibo Yisema Rabbi Meir. Our Mishnah could be following Shitas Rabbi Meir, who said that there is a mitzvah to feed daughters and certainly sons because of the Torah. V'chikam, and the Mishnah means like this. Ha'av ein chayiv v'mzenes pitay. There is no chiv to feed daughters. V'adin lebnai. Same thing with sons. There's no chiv. Ha mitzvah b'bita ika. But a mitzvah, there is a mitzvah to feed a daughter. Kal v'chomer lebanim, and certainly sons because of the Torah element within them. So the question was, why does the Mishnah point out daughters? V'haidik tani bita. The reason why the Mishnah did that, Hakamashmon, the chiddush was that afilu bita chayva hideleka hamitzvah ika. That even a daughter who's not involved in Torah, although there's no chayv, but there is still a mitzvah. So the chiddush there is that even a daughter would have a mitzvah because she's still your daughter. So the Mishnah will tell us that there is no chiyuv by son or daughter, but there is a mitzvah by both. Or the Mishnah could be following Rabbi Yehuda. The Mishnah is like this. There's no chiyuv by daughter. And certainly by a son, because there is no zilusa, there's no shame and embarrassment element as much as a daughter. So certainly a son has no chiyuv. But there is a mitzvah to feed a son, and certainly a daughter because of the zilusa aspect, the shame and embarrassment element. So why then does the Mishnah point out daughter? If daughter and son are really the same, there's no chiv and there is a mitzvah, so why mention daughter? How come the chiddush is even a daughter where there's an extra zilusa element, perhaps due to that shame and embarrassment component, there would be a chiv to support daughter. The chiddush is no. So the bottom line is, there's no chiv by son or daughter, but there is a mitzvah. Another pshat can be Rabbi Yehuda Breika. Our Mishnah is following Rabbi Yehuda Vachika Amar, and the Mishnah means like this. There's no chiyuv by daughter. Vadin the same by son. Because during his lifetime there's no chiyuv. Vadin, and the truth is, the same thing would apply to mitzvah. There's no mitzvah during his lifetime. So the question is, why does the Mishnah say that there is no chayiv to feed a daughter during his lifetime, which almost sounds like you're saying there is a mitzvah. No. The reason why the Mishnah picked this type of language, because there is a chiyuv to feed a daughter after passing, after death. Therefore, the Mishnah used a matching, contrasting language. Tananami eino chayiv. So while referring to his lifetime, the Mishnah chose the lashon eino chayiv, in contrast to after death, where he is chayiv. So the bottom line is, we have three shittas, which are really two shittas. We have Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda who hold that there is a mitzvah to feed son and daughter during his lifetime, whereas Rabbi Yehuda Kessler disagrees, there is no mitzvah. Amar B'la, Amar Shlakish, Mishum Rabbi Yehuda bar Chanina. Now the Gemara will embark on a long list of takanas which were enacted when the Sanhedrin, the Sanhedrin went through many stops, many golios, many exiles, one of which was in a town called Usha. So the Sanhedrin G'dayla, when it was in Usha, they were masakin several takanis, one of which pertained to a father's obligation vis-a-vis feeding his children. So B'Usha Yiskiru, in the town of Usha, they were masakin shehei adam zones bonav es b'neisav shenk tanim. Although there is no chiyuv to do so, but there's a takana that one should look after his children while they're young. Now Tosfos points out, based on the Gemara later, until 6 years old, it's certainly a chiyuv, an absolute obligation, that's totally dependent on you. Of course you have to feed them. The takanas Usha pertain to beyond 6 years old. At that point he's absolved, there's no real chiyuv. They were masakin, yes, a person should do so. And Rashi says until they become an adult. So the question is, hilchas hakavasei, oy ein hilchas hakavasei, the halacha lamasa. Do we paskin? Do we actually follow this shita of Rabbi Yehuda bar Chanina in the name of Usha, that there is a takana to feed children or not? Is it an obligation based on the takana, or is it just voluntary? Toshma, we have a raya that indeed we do not adopt this takana. It's commendable. It's done for the most part, but it's not a chiyuv. Toshma ki hava'ah, so the kamed Rabbi Yehuda. When these fellows who refused to accommodate their family would come to Rabbi Yehuda, Amarlu, he would tell them, he would give them some strong musar. He would admonish them. Yarud yolda. Yarud, Rashi says, a tanin, perhaps a snake. Tosfos said it was a certain type of bird who was an achzari on his children, doesn't really care about his family. So the Yarud, referring to this fellow here, was a head of a household, but not looking after his kids. Yarud Yoldi, Yarud gives birth, va'abnei masa. And then on the townspeople, on the community, Shadia tosses her kids, her offspring. You have a family, take care of them. It's your obligation. So bottom line is, he didn't really force him, but he tried to set him straight, but it wasn't forced, which almost sounds like that it wasn't really a chiv. And in fact, that's what the Gemara is proving from here. The fact that he didn't force him is a raya that we don't really adopt the takana of Usha. It's not an obligation, but very much preferred and advisable. When these individuals would come to Rav Chizda, Amar Lahu, he would tell them like this: Kafule asita, go overturn a mortar, basically put down a stool with tzibura in public. V'leikum, Allah, and this uncaring father should get up on the stool, up there in public, v'leima, and announce as follows, pertaining to himself: Urva b'ay b'nei, even a raven has interest in his children and feeds them. Oh, Gavra, this fellow loy b'ay b'nei doesn't do that. Rashi has another pshat. It wasn't the fellow himself who yelled out, but it was the Shliach Tzibur who would get up and admonish this fellow in public. So even a raven cares more for his children than you do. Really? V'urva b'ay b'nei, and his the raven actually cares and looks after his children. V'aksiv livnei oirav asher yikro. We say this every morning in the Pesukah de Zimra. Hashem looks after the young ravens who are calling out to him for sustenance because they're not being looked after by their parents. So we see a raven does not have that care and concern for his kids. Like Kasha, the answer is, it depends what they look like. Habechivri, when they're still young and they look, they're white, so the parents don't really identify with them. and therefore they don't feed them. Once they grow up a bit and they turn black, now the black parents identify with them and they take care of them. When this fellow who is an uncaring father would come to Rava, he would tell him, Nichalach, are you okay with the fact that you're not looking after your children? The mitzini barneicha mitztaka, that your children should be sustained from tzedakah. It's embarrassing to you. It's not becoming. Go ahead and take care of your family. So all these people got very hearty advice, but it wasn't actually forced upon them because it wasn't really a takana. Says the Gemara. But in some cases we actually force. This concept of just letting it go, that's only Eladali Amid, when he wasn't really appraised at being able to provide, meaning he's not a wealthy person. Then we can't force him. Aval Amid, but we know that he's an usher and he can certainly afford this. Kafinali Akarcha, we actually force him. You know why? It's no different than tzedakah. Kihad Rav, like Ravi, Kafil Rav Nasan Barami, he forced Rav Nasan, who was able to donate money and refused to do so. And he extracted from him a huge amount, 400 zuz for tzedakah. So apparently you can do that. Here as well, a father was uncaring, ungiving, and he's able to provide, we force him to do so. Rabbi Law, Rish Lakish, another takana of Usha. But Usha is skinu. When the Sanhedrin was in Usha, they were masakin as follows. Totally unrelated to the previous sugya. Just happens to be another takana of Usha. What was the takana? Hakois of kol nechas of Levanov. A fellow decides, I'm giving away all my properties to my children. And they take him literally by his word. Okay, it's ours starting from right now. So now the father is totally bankrupt. He's totally penniless. Who's going to sustain the father and the mother? The halacha is that him and his wife, the giver, the father, can actually still support himself using those nechasim. Because the assumption is, that was the mindset of this fellow. Sure, I'm giving it away to you, but until I actually don't need it anymore, I still want to tap into these properties. Maskef la Rabbi Zera. So Rabbi Zera asked a kash. Rabbi Tema, some say, Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani. Is this a chiddush? Is this a novel chiddush? There was an even greater halacha, even a greater novelty that was already that had been established in halacha. Halacha is that if a wife has properties, so the husband, he assumes possession of those properties, and we treat him as a buyer, like a loikeach. Right? He's like the first lien on those properties, first claim. Right? So let's say it turns out that there's somebody that had a claim which preceded the husband, so you can go ahead and extract those properties. But the halacha is that when it comes to supporting an almana, right, after a person's death, his almana needs to be supported. We cannot go ahead and extract properties. We can't tap into nechasim which the husband had sold during his lifetime. And the Gemara talks about it at great lengths in Baba Basra. So supporting a person, it's an undefined amount. It can be years and years of support. So a purchaser can't really look out for that. It's not something you can be careful from. And therefore we don't hold it against him. And if you purchase a property, it turns out that your seller is owing, alimony and all that. That's something which you cannot extract from the loikeach. Okay, so that's the general halacha. So let's say a man passes away, and he leaves behind some nechas. His daughter is a Yerush. She takes over the properties, and now she's married. His daughter's married. So his daughter's husband, which is the departed fellow's son-in-law, is now considered like a loikeach, right? We said the Baal is considered like a purchaser pertaining to his wife's properties. So this son-in-law, his wife, was Yerush these properties from her father, so now her husband sort of takes over those properties. What happens if the departed father left behind a wife, an almana, who needs to be supported? So typically, we don't really access sold properties to provide for an almana's needs, right? Because it's just an endless proposition. But in this case, the almana can access her former husband's properties, even though they were already handed over to his daughter and to her husband. A special takana. And Rashi explains, look, typically, we don't do that by a real purchaser who actually spent money on it and all that. But here, the husband here, the son-in-law, didn't spend a red penny on this field. He just got it free of charge by way of his wife. So it lends to this. It's fair that we would have this arrangement, have the almana still supported from this fellow's properties. So G'daylim Mizu Amru. So this halacha is an even greater chiddush than the previous halacha. Previous halacha pertained to a person who gave away all his properties to children. So during his lifetime, until he no longer needs to be supported, until then he can still support himself from those properties. Here's an even greater halacha. Almanasin and zaynis minachasav. If a fellow passes away, his almana can have her zaynis from his properties, even though they have already been handed over to his daughter and her husband. Hu v'ishtami. Is there any need to even speak about the first halacha that a person and his wife can still access their properties, which they had given away? They can still access their property while they're still around, because that's the presumed mindset. And this is a no halacha. The shalach Ravin be'igarte. Ravin sent a letter. Halacha misha meis v'nech almano bas. A fellow passes away, leaves behind a wife and a daughter who is married to a husband, and she now assumes possession of the departed father's estate. Almanasin is zenis minachasim. The almana can still access the nechasim. So the daughter is not yet married. The almana can still access the nechasim. Nisis habas. And even if the daughter marries, and now the husband is in the picture, and he's sort of a caretaker of the properties, he's like a lekeach, still the halacha remains unchanged. Almanasin and zenis minachasim. The almana can still access those nechasim. Mesa habas, a third level. The daughter had passed away, and now her husband, who is the son-in-law of the departed fellow, now has sole rights. He totally assumes possession of those properties. The halacha remains unchanged. The almana can still use those properties. Rabbi Yehuda ben Achoisei, the son of the sister, meaning the nephew of who Shal Beis Bechanina, he said like this: Al Yodei Yamaisa. I had a personal story. This type of shayla v'amru, and the Chachamim determined that yes, almanasin and zenis minachas, the almana can still access those nachas. So having known this halach, a property that's already sitting in somebody's hands, a daughter, a married daughter, a son-in-law, still the almana can go and access those nachas. Who v'yishtem mibayah? Is there any need to even speak about that first case? It goes without saying. If I give away my property to my children, of course I still want access to it as long as I still need it. So what's the chiddush of Usha? Ma'od perhaps there's a difference. Hasam hu deleka de tarach. Maybe by the son-in-law, look, nobody really did much to deserve this property. So the almana can still have access to it. I'm not taking much away from you. You didn't really earn it. But over here, when the couple is still around, Sorry, let's go back. Perhaps there's room to differentiate between the almana who's given that schus, because over there there's nobody to look after her. She's an almana, of course the Chachamim want her to be supported, so you can access those properties. But over here, when the couple is still alive and well, let him look after himself and his wife. Why access your son's properties which you had already given over to him? Kamashwan, the chiddush is no. The presumed mindset is that a person still wants to access his properties as long as he still needs them. The question is hilchas hakavasei, oy less hilchas hakavasei. So in the most recent halacha, most recent takanas usha, Rabbi Yehuda tells us, you give away properties to your children, you still have access and rights to those properties as long as you're still around. The halacha follows that shita or not? Hilchas hakavasei, or perhaps the halacha does not follow Rabbi Yehuda's shita. Tashma is a raya that we do not accept the shita. So Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Yonasan, so they both were standing, habukaimi. Asa hogav, this fellow walks over. Gochen, he bends down, v'nashke Rabbi Yonasan akari. So Rabbi Yonasan was standing, and this fellow comes along, bends down and kisses Rabbi Yonasan on his feet. Amalei Rabbi Chanina, so Rabbi Chanina asks Rabbi Yonasan, "My hi, what's the big event here? What's going on here? What's this intense show of appreciation coming forth?" Amalei, Rabbi Yonasan responds, "I'll explain to you what happened. This fellow gave away all his nechasim to his children, but he needed to be supported until he no longer needs that. Vasisinu, and I forced the children lizani to feed their father. So I went the extra mile. I went above and beyond to ensure this fellow is looked after, and that's why he's so happy about me." So we have a right from here that the actual halacha would not follow this shita, because apparently he was doing something extra for him. That's why he was showing such immense appreciation. I understand that if you say lavdina, that this was not required according to the letter of the law. He was not really entitled to those nechasim, the father that is. So I understand why Rabbi Yonasan had to go the extra mile and to go be matriach. Rashi says to get it going, to arrange for this fellow's support, and that's why this fellow was so happy. Eli Amras Dina, but if it's a basic halacha, a basic requirement, they have to support their father. Boy, so why would he have to go and push, go the extra mile, and do all this effort to have it arranged? It was a plain simple halacha. It would not be considered such a gemilas chasadim that would generate such a show of appreciation. So apparently, the halacha lamasa is not like the takanas usha. Okay, so bottom line is we learned about an isha who's been handed over to the shliach of the Baal. She's now considered somewhat married, pertaining to the oynish. It turns from skila to chenek, and even if she decides to turn back and go home, that halacha remains. We have a discussion regarding parents feeding their children. So as we explained, the name of Taisvis, until the minimum age of 6, there is an absolute chiyuv, but until the bar mitzvah, in Usha there was a takana, which we did not really accept as halacha. Although many shittas learn that there is a mitzvah to feed the children, even though there's no chiyuv, and in fact, we find several stories in the Gemara where the chachamim were not too happy about the fellow who was not uncaring about his family. He worse than the Erev, etc., etc. Then we ended with another takanas usha, in which the Gemara concluded was not really accepted lahalacha. However, Rabbi Yonasan certainly took on that the concept to the point that he went all out to ensure that the father would be properly looked after. All the best to you, and Hatzlacha Rabbah.